Hi, David. Sorry I couldn't get back to you. I'm kind of booked up, and I'm actually pretty booked up next week before our kickoff call. I'm booked up on Monday and Tuesday. I'm doing on-site training, so I have very little access to both email and my phone. So I know you're in a hurry, and you kind of had some questions on how this workbook will be filled out. So I thought I'd throw together this little quick recording for you to maybe help you. If you go through it and it hasn't answered one of your questions, drop me an email specifically with your question, and maybe I can answer it in between classes, or maybe I can even reach out to you on Monday at some point. I'm just really extraordinarily booked, and they even have my little lunch break filled with a call that I have to be on. So I'm not going to have a lot of time over the course of the next week, and then I travel on Wednesday, so it's basically it's a big hassle, and I apologize for not being more available. But what I'm going to do is kind of go through the tabs with you and kind of point out what you kind of want to concentrate on to get you started, and what you don't have to really worry about too much. And then if you have any questions beyond that, I'll make it quick for you. We'll just go through it. But if you need a little more in depth, we can go through it a little slower. So the first little part of this, you can see that they're colored tabs below. These yellow tabs that you're seeing, it's really informational. You know, how does the workbook work, what your responsibilities are. Here's some information on training and how long you can expect for training classes. I don't know what all, I didn't really review it, but I don't know how much you bought of training and what you need at these locations. And we can also talk about doing a training video of some sort for remote users or something. I know you have a team that I trained before who trained, so maybe you have something in mind. Here's the default feature codes. That's what's in the system by default. Your system's been around a little while, so maybe some of these default codes are no longer valid. Maybe they've been modified. A lot of times people will add 9s to them to use the numbers in some other way. That may be the case, but you can go to your system and look up feature codes under devices and feature codes, and you can see the modifications made in your existing system if you're thinking about, and the only reason to do that is if you're thinking about a range for your new extension numbers. You have, what, 25 or less, so you may be able to keep them within your current range of extension numbers, but if you're looking to do some sort of modification per location, you know, a different lead number or something like that, keep in mind that it can't conflict with any of the existing feature codes. Either you have to modify a feature code to make it work, or you'll have to pick one that's outside the ranges. 1s and 2s are always safe. And then when you get into 3s, you can see quite a few 3s are used. 4 is a single feature, which is reverse transfer. 5 is conference. So you can easily modify 4s and 5s and 6s and 7s fairly quickly and easily because they only represent a single digit. So you could put a 9-5 for conference, and then you would have 5s available for a location. So you can see you can do some modifications fairly easily. And maybe some of that modification has been done to support existing extension ranges that you already have. But this is something to keep in mind, and maybe even look into the existing system. When you go under System and then Devices and Feature Codes, you'll see the full current list of feature codes and how they've been modified. You can also run a report. And if you need any help with that, I can give you a step-by-step on running a report on your feature codes if you need to just look at it. Best practice is to try to stay in 1s and 2s. No one's changed. Those are always available. So that's the end of the yellow tabs. The blue tabs are, I filled in some of that information. So the blue tabs are more oriented towards us, us putting in information, but you can also touch these and modify them if you see something you don't like or don't want. An example of that is I've already put in the location information. So here that is, the location information. I put in all locations that equipment was sold on, and that's because that the locations are all have equipment, and when I populate the location, it's going to give me a place to put the equipment list. So that's why I put Springfield. Even though we're not adding phones to Springfield, we are adding some features and some some MyClab clients, so I wanted to make sure I had a place to put those and track the equipment. So I went ahead and built those. So if you call Fort Worth something totally different, you can just mark it for whatever it's called, you know, whatever you like it. I just put in what the location was, and I put in the addresses, so you can kind of verify that stuff. I don't know the local location's local phone number on all these. I kind of know yours, but I know the one I have listed as your direct dial number, so I didn't really want to put that on there. And then at some point we're going to have to deal with this 911. You might have a LIM module, you know, something off one of the phones and a POTS line, but if you know what that number is, we can put that on there, you know, test it and all that sort of thing. So we can get back to that if you don't know off the top of your head, but that's really all this is information. And building these identifiers here will allow you to select that all through the book. And there's a logical progression on this book where you start at the beginning tab and work your way through, and that allows you to pick as you move along. Example is this equipment. I went ahead and put the locations in there, and then that identified these headers for me for Fort Worth and Knoxville and Springfield. I can show you as I scroll through. Oklahoma City and Springfield being the last one. And I was able to put all your equipment in there. And that way we can keep track of your equipment, and we can look at our counts. The one you're most interested in when you're assigning phones are going to be how many phones you bought, and here they are per site. You know, Fort Worth has 16, Knoxville has 5, and so on and so forth. I think 3 here in Oklahoma City, and then there's none in Springfield that are phones. So that'll give you a count of what you'll have. It looks like you bought all the same 5340Es, so that makes it easy to fill in the next little piece of it. But there's your equipment if you need referral to refer back to it. It also will allow you, you know, you can do the count, and I'll show you a place where you can add it in, so it can give you a running count of how many phones you use. But knowing we're only talking about 25 or less, we really aren't going to need to do that. You probably keep track of it pretty easy. Here's a little contact list. I didn't have a lot of time, but I threw in the people you know, Chris and myself. I will work on that to kind of build it up to give you, you know, Ralph's information. He's the operations manager. And then I also have contacts at the other locations, managers who are supporting, you know, Oklahoma or Knoxville location, that sort of thing. So we can throw those in there, and I'll get those filled out for you. IP addresses is the next tab. That's going to be something Chris is going to work with you on. I'm going to remind Chris about that when I send this out to you. I'll say, you know, maybe you can get with David next week and get those addresses, because I know he's going to be working on the gateways that we send to his house, so I'm sure he's going to have to program that up with information. And I know you've worked with him before, pretty easy to work with, so he may be reaching out for information so we can begin that process and whatever other IP addresses or information he may need. So more to come on that, and that'll be you and Chris kind of working through that. Then any telco information, you know, whatever's, I don't know if it's existing network between you guys or if that's something that's in the works, but you know, notify us of what you got going there. And then we get into these red tabs. So the red tabs are going to be the ones that you're mostly responsible for. And let me move over to those. You can see there's not that many. It's a handful of tabs. Again, you start at the beginning with the DID tab, and every time you add something in, it allows you to pick it on other tabs. So that's why it's important to kind of stay in order. If you jump around, you can do that. Like if you know, hey, I got a bunch of extension numbers, you throw them in, that's fine, but you'll have to go back if you have a direct dial number. I guess mostly what we're talking about here is if you have a direct dial number in Springfield that you're going to point at one of these phones, because I don't believe any of these locations, I think they're all working off the Springfield location without their own direct dial numbers. So if you wanted to add a Springfield number to point at that, even if it's an existing one in your system, put it in here and maybe make a little note to the side, existing or something, so we know we're not going to rebuild the number, but we're going to point the number that exists at one of these stations. I just put a couple in there so we'd have a pick, so I went ahead. The part I filled out, the grayed out area, you don't do anything with. It does it automatically. It tells you the extension number that's associated to it, but you will do the location. You can see this is where those locations come in. If I want to identify this is a number for Oklahoma, I just fit Oklahoma in there, or if I want to do it for you won't do much for Springfield, but Fort Worth, I can put it in there. And then you can put in the number. If there's a toll-free number associated to it, you can put it there. Okay. It filled in when I assigned it, because I went through and kind of assigned one to give you a kind of a format to work with. on mine. Yours is all blank, but just to show you what it looks like when you fill it in. So there it is. I put in a number or two. Maybe you don't have any numbers for yours, and maybe you don't intend on them having a direct dial number to their phone. And if that's the case, then they would just be transferred by an extension number from the receptionist. But this is, or maybe they have that LIM module that everyone's ringing into, and it's ringing locally there. So however that's working, maybe the gateway is supporting it. I don't know. So as we work through that, if you know numbers, throw them in here. This is if you have any fax direct dial numbers that you're going to assign. This is a place where you can add the number in, pick the number. Again, you have this locator that you can tell us which number you're picking. I don't know if you have any of that going on, but that's where you would kind of tell us about it. The big one is the Stations tab. That's one you're going to work mostly on. This first part where it says Features Phone Count, you don't have to do anything over here if you don't want. If you wanted to, you can count up how many 5340s you have in there, and then it would tell you how many you've used. That's all that is, and you have to manually put in the count. Once you put in the count, it gives you a count against it of how many you have left. You can see when you have none or you go over, it makes it red, so you know, oops, I got a problem, I need more phones. So that's the idea of it. You don't have that many, so do it if you want. You can do a hot desk licensing, how many licenses you bought, and then figure out how many you're consuming. So it's just a little count tally. Beyond that, you start here at the first name, and I put in a couple, but really all you do, once you type in the name, it opens up that tab for you, so you can tell it's done. It's not grayed out anymore. Anything that's grayed out, we always assume it's no, but I am one of those people who have to fill in all the blanks. If you're not one of those, don't worry about it, but you have to put in the number you're going to use and make sure it doesn't conflict with any of your old numbers. So first name, last name, put in the extension number. Then you have your login ID. This has to do with being a hot desk user. So if those users down there are hot desk users, you know how we did it at your location. We used the beginning of the email address without the and the rest of it. So for you, for example, it would be David D, right? So that would be your username or your login ID for your MyCollab. And then the passcode is generated like 1111, and then it changes when they get in, and that's in that email once you deploy that email out. So keep that in mind that that's what that login ID is. Then the email address, that has to do with sending voicemails to email. So if you don't care about that and that's not going to be a feature, you don't even have to fill it in. But if you want it in the system for later use, or if you intend on sending their voicemails to their emails, put in the email address, and that'll open that up. This is where you can select that DID we talked about. So there it is. You can see that the one I've already consumed isn't available. There's only 2 I built. So once I use this one, it'll no longer show me any DIDs. So it only lets you pick the ones that are available. Once I pick it, if I go to the next one, it will no longer give me a way to pick it because there's no more in there. So yeah, anything you want to represent number-wise, you need to put it in that first tab. So again, start at the beginning tab, work your way through. Phone type, you have all the same phone types. So unlike any Excel sheet, if you grab it, you can pull it down, cover all the numbers. You don't have to type each one in or pick each one. Or you can pick from the list, but you have all the same phones, so that's pointless. Here's the location. So this is how, in your email you're asking, I don't know how to identify the location. That's how you can do it. And you can do this in not necessarily all the Fort Worth and then all the Oklahoma. You can mix and match if you want. I always just do all one location all the way down and then start the next, but it doesn't matter how you do it because this will identify it. So all you have to do is pick the location we're talking about. Here, this one's going to be Knoxville, and then it makes it Knoxville. So now we know that this is a Knoxville phone and this extension is associated to it. And you can see you can do quite a few locations off this same workbook, and that's the idea. We have one workbook because really it's just one system, and these are just phones hanging off of it. So that's how you're going to pick your location. Is this a recorded extension? If you guys are doing an external, like my VCR recording system, then you'll say yes. If I can't remember if you guys have that system or not, you'll say no if you don't. Recorded for quality purposes. This is you recording 2 people, not them pushing a record button. That's a different feature. This is your hot desk. Are they a hot desk user? You know, hot desk is the ability to log into a phone and log into a different one. I don't believe you're using that. I can't remember exactly. But it requires a host phone, and then you log into that phone and it brings all your buttons to the phone. So if you had a place where you had open seating, or so you're a traveling sales guy and you wanted them to be able to log into a conference room, then you can make those phones hot desks so they can log into them. So it's yes or no on that. Okay, and then voicemail, do they have voicemail or do they not have voicemail? That's a yes or no. Paging is talking about, unless you have a page unit, it's talking about paging over the phone, so you can hit a page zone for Oklahoma and page over those few phones. If you want them to have that ability, yes is the answer to that. And then special restrictions, that has to do with out dialing, you know, and it's just a choice of what they can dial. No restrictions means it's wide open. They can dial international, long distance, local, or you can restrict it down from there. If you say no international, then it's going to make an assumption that long distance is okay and local calls are okay, but no international. If you say no long distance, then it's going to make the assumption that local calls are okay, but now no long distance, and so on and so forth. You can restrict it all the way down to local only, or internal. That would be more like for a lobby phone or something, or dial 911. Maybe you'll want that to be the only function for that phone, you know, in a warehouse area or something. So you'll decide on what functions you want for each of these people, and you can design it per person. So maybe everyone in Oklahoma can dial international because that's what they do there, but everyone in Knoxville can only dial long distance. So your call on that. Do you want the voicemail to email? Well, if you don't put in an email address in there, it's always going to be no, but if you do, you can still put it in there for later use. Then you have it in there, and you can still say no to it, and then we'll basically have the email address installed into the system so it's ready to go, and then you would have to manually go to that mailbox and turn that on by changing the settings. So if you want to get it partially set up, say yes, or say no, but put in the email address, and if you don't want anything, just say no, or leave it blank if you don't put an email address in there. This is if they're using a console, and I don't believe I saw any more of those sold. This is if they're using a Mitel headset with the phone. I don't believe I saw any of those sold, so that would be no. And remember, you can just grab the nose and drag them down, so it's all filled out. This is for the mobile twinning. Now, remember, MyCollab has this functionality built into it, so if they're a MyCollab user, you don't need this. But what this is a button that's on the phone that will allow you to turn on and off the twinning to your cell phone, so your desk phone and cell phone will ring simultaneously. Not really simultaneously, but there's a delay before it rings your cell phone. But once it's done ringing, it'll go to your desk voicemail. There's a button that we would add on to anyone you say yes to on that, where they will have an on and off, and also a button that will allow them to hand off to their cell phone. If a desk phone call comes in and it's ringing their cell phone, they pick it up on their cell phone, but now they want it to go back to their desk phone, they can hit a handoff button and switch it back to their desk phone. So that's functionality, yes or no on that. If you are going to set up that mobile twinning, then you want to put in the phone number of the cell that you want to twin it to. So we'll need that. And then the rest is just informational. Sorry, I got out of sort there. It's informational. If you have a specific room number for one of these locations, you don't have to worry about cable pairs. These are IP phones. And then any notes that you want to put with it. Hey, this person has their own headset maybe, so we know to hook that up, because we'll send this workbook out to everybody in the field as well. So that's all I will need for the extensions, that information, and that's what everything means. The rest of this has to do with if they're members of a hunt group, or if you want to set up a routing announcement in your system for any of these new groups. So you don't have to include anything existing. That won't pertain to these people. But if you have an existing group that you want to add them to, say you have the main ring in or they're a member of one of the groups, you can kind of list what that number is and just say add the number. So let's take a look at that really quick. Here's your hunt groups, okay? I'm just setting up a test one for you. You just like in the system when you're building one, You name it, give it a descriptor, you give it a number that makes sense. And what you probably want to do, I don't know what your numbers are, but if it's what we typically use, we use 2,000 and up. So probably 2,000 is already used, but maybe you're at 225 or 210 or something like that, or 223. So find the next available number if you want, or you can pick a new number range for that if you want. No big deal. And that's what we will number it. And that way people can, like a receptionist could hit, transfer and dial this 2023 to send it to those groups in Oklahoma if you want to set up each of those locations, maybe an all-ring hunt group, so you can call them all at one time. You could do that. Here's the search, the type of group it's going to be. So that's where you determine, is it going to be a all-ring group, or is it going to be a hunt group where it rings one and then rings the next and rings the next? And you can look for the search type. It could be like balanced call count, that sort of thing. Or is it going to be an ACD group? I don't believe you have any of those. Those are the ones you log into. You're an agent, and then you have reporting capabilities with that if you have that package. So you determine what it's going to be. If it's going to be all ring, that opens this up so you can pick a P group. And you can look in your existing system, because if you have any all rings set up already, maybe you're using some of these numbers. You can just pick one that's available. It doesn't matter. Name it. This is going to be the Oklahoma group, okay? And then you have the number associated to it if you want. Priority levels are more of an ACD thing. It's just if you're part of two hunt groups, maybe one has priority over the other one. So you can put a level to that. Lower means it's less important. Higher means it's more important. You really won't worry about that unless you're doing ACD. This is, are camp-ons allowed? That's always yes. That just means, will it wait for an agent? Is it allowed to do that? Search type, when you're doing all ring, you don't have to worry about any of these linear. It's always going to be linear for the all ring anyway, because it's looking at the list rather than looking at the person. But if you were going to do a regular hunt group on this, it blocks out that because you can't use it. And then you can go down here and say, I want it to distribute it, because you can use it for UCD groups or ACD groups, either one. You can see the last two are only reserved for ACD. They're special. Longest idlet looks for the person who hasn't had the call the longest, or it tries to balance how many calls that person gets. But your wheelhouse will be linear, which means it starts at the top and works its way down. So whoever the members are, you'd put them in order of how you want the ring to work. Distributed just means it randomly picks somebody. It's not always picking on the same person. So you can pick how you want that to be. Or if it's all ring, you just leave it as linear, because it doesn't matter, because it's just going to ring everyone in this group that you create. You can do multiple groups. You can change the numbers. If for some reason you look and 004 is already used, and all the way to 0010, you can just change it to 011, or 12 or whatever. So it goes in numeric order, and this number is not ever dialed, so you don't ever have to worry about it too much. But it'll start with a P and then whatever the number is afterwards. Okay. These are your timers. So they mimic the timers that are set up in the hunt group timing setup, and you can see the defaults that are there. That's just what they're set at, not necessarily recommendations. No answer advance would be only really apply if you had a non-all ring, like you were doing a distributed or a linear. So if you have members in order, that's how long it'll ring at that individual's phone before it moves to the next person. And if you have everyone ringing together, you don't have to worry about that timer, because it doesn't really matter. It'll just stay at the default, but it won't do anything, because it's going to ring until the overflow timer goes off, and if you have an overflow location. So you put in, if you do have it as a hunt group that's, say, I don't know, if you have a hunt group that's a UCD and it's a distributed like this, then you would want to go ahead and put a timer in. It's just picking a time, how many seconds. It's usually 6 seconds per ring, as a general rule. So 18 seconds is 3 rings. So if you wanted to bump it up a little bit, say you wanted to ring on each phone for 25 seconds, you just pick 25. This is the announcement. It's a one-time announcement that plays, and it would be something along the line of I don't know, say, hey, you've reached us, please hold for the first available, you know, or if you, sorry, you know, thanks for calling, press 1 to leave us a message and stay on the line to get an agent. You know, it gives you that kind of option, because what it's doing when you go to an announcement, it's playing a call routing announcement generally, and then that's what you got. And that's what these types here are for. If it's going to go to an announcement, you know, you say, you know, how many seconds before it goes there, and then you can say what the call announcement's going to be. I would always, you know, you can go to a hunt group in this case. I don't know why you do that, or an extension, but usually we'd go to an announcement, a call routing announcement, CRA, and then you put in the number of the CRA. If it's a new one, just look in your current list in your voicemail and under voice processor, and you know where you see your call applications, and then you can see what number you haven't used yet, or give it a, you know, give it its own number if it's going to be unique, and then you would record that number, you know. Then you have your overflow, which is a repeatable number. So you can say, hey, I want this to come on, you know, every 30 seconds or whatever. And it might be like, sorry for the long wait. Press 1 to leave us a message. So you can repeat that over and over. And then again, you would pick, you know, for a recording like that, you'd pick the CRA and then put in the recording number. Recall is when it leaves this hunt group. So you can have it leave this hunt group and go to another hunt group with more members, or you could have it go out into an auto attendant. So you have the same choices. You know, you can have it go, you know, to a call routing announcement. You can go to a recording. You can have it go to a hunt group or an extension. So it's when it leaves this hunt group, what do you want it to do? So when you're looking at any of this stuff, maybe a good logical way to do it is you call down. Maybe you're ringing all the phones down in Oklahoma, and if they, you know, if they ring 20 times or 10 times or whatever, and you want them to eventually go somewhere, you can reroute them up to the receptionist in Springfield if you want to. So that's kind of how that you can handle that. That's a good way to do it. These other settings here have to do with ACD. Okay, so this is wrap-up timer. That's how much time before another call is introduced in that group. So if we get to the place where we're going to do ACD, we'll talk through these, make sure it's designed right, and work on the timers together. Also, you have group supervisors. So a couple of things on that. You can do supervisors for ACD. They'll have some control over the ACD members. Also, you can do it even with a UCD group, and maybe you can listen to, you know, like do a listen-in feature where I can hear your conversation. So you can put a member in there in their extension. And if it's an existing one, that's fine. Put it in there in the extension. You just don't add it to the Stations tab. We'll know it's part of your old system. And then these are your members. So you can put the members in here. Now, if you're working with an existing group, say the people down there in Oklahoma, you're just adding them as members to a group that already exists in Springfield, just put the Springfield name and number up here, and then add that member in. You don't have to put all the other members in there, you know, and then we'll just add them in. So that's how that works. Here's your location for this. So again, like if this one is for Oklahoma, you know, you can just pick the Oklahoma location. And if there's a direct dial number that rings to it, you know, if it's not out of an auto tenant, you'll have whatever number is available to pick from to put in there, or if an 800 number is in there, you can pick from that. Okay. So, and then you can see that it gives you lots of spaces there to put members if you're going to put a bunch of members in there. And then there's another one. So you can do multiple ones, one for each site, and it's the exact same process. So hopefully that helps you on that. The next little piece is your call or routing announcements. That's that CRA we talked about earlier. So if you were going to build a brand new hunt group, and then you're saying, hey, when it rings for, I think we built something up here. If it rings for 25 seconds, or it rings for 26 seconds, go to this overflow and say I have it go into an attendant, then this is where I can build that. So this is where I can put in the description. I can put in the number I want to make it. I can put in any direct dial number that might be available. I used up the last one, so it's not pickable. Here's the location, so I can pick my location for this one. This is the auto attendant for Knoxville, if you want that. then then the digit translation, what digits want to go where. So if this is an auto attendant, I might have pound be the company directory. I might have star be subscriber access so I can get into my voicemail. I can have one go to maybe that hunt group I built. What happens when timeout happens. And then you have scripts you can do for day and night. And then we can put a little recording number. And it would be the available recording number that you have. Some of them are already going to be listed, and we started you up a little farther, so you can pick like a logical one that's not already used. And they have to be unique for different recordings, so you can't, unless you're going to use an existing recording, you'll want to have a different recording number in there. And then you can script it out here, so it could be either recorded, or you can record it and send it to us. Chris can send you the file types, and you can do multiple groups here. But you can see there's always going to be a location, so that's how you're going to identify the location. Okay. So that's for your call routing announcement. This is your star application. I believe you're using this now. We can just, this is going to be a time-based routing for day and night. So if you wanted to open things up at a certain time and close things up, we can work on this. It's a little more complex, unfortunately, but here you go, a location again. So if you wanted a star application you say you had a main number going to Oklahoma City and you wanted during the day till 5 o'clock it ring all the members there, but after 5 go to an auto attendant. This is how you can set it up so it can automatically do it. What we would need there is we'll pick a number just like you would for your call routing announcement. It's built in that same area. Who the attendant is, that's by default. And then a transfer recall destination if you have one. If there's a direct number pointed at it, which generally there would be, and then the location of where you want this, who you want this for. Then all you have to do is put in your specific days of the week that it's covering. So you might want to say, here, this is just a pointer. This just is like a traffic cop. When the call comes in, it says, hey, when it's between this time, send it to this call routing announcement or send it to this hunt group, and then we'll build it so it goes to a call routing announcement and immediately times out to the hunt group. So we can work with a hunt group or with a another call routing announcement. So if you during the day it goes to a group of people, just put in the destination to be the hunt group number, and if it's at night, you want it to go to the call routing announcement for that night, and then you can do the days of the week. And this is also where you can put in the holidays. So if you know your holiday schedule for the year, you can say what day is Christmas, what day is Thanksgiving, when you're going to be open and closed for that. So if it's a specific date, you can put that in. If it's just your normal open and close, you just put in the days that you're open and the times, and there you go. So it's just like it is in the system. Okay, and then here's our key map. You can see as you start at the top, it starts with 20s, which you don't have, but as you go down, it covers the 30s, and then, of course, what you have, the 40s. So we can mimic what your current key maps are, but here's the keys. You can see they're numbered, and as you remember, below the line is what you control. Everything above that is soft keys that can't be modified, and then what is existing as a reminder, transfer, your hold button, your mute button, that's all built in. So you need to have like a prime key on this guy right here, so that would be key 1, and then you can decide if you want multi-calls keys, and we can talk about if you want to talk about what features are still out there. On your current system, I think you have an outgoing button, so you can kind of look at your current phone and decide if that's working. Let's make the rest of them that, and we'll build it to be the same. So there that is. That's how you build the key map. Okay. So that's it. So the rest of this has to do with signing off. We'll talk about that. When we think we have the database corrected, we'll ask you to sign correct, and you feel like everything's going your way and everything's in there, we'll ask you to sign off, and Chris will begin programming. Here's the checklist for afterwards when we do the work and start installing stuff. We will modify this checklist to make sense. Right now it's just a default one, but there's obviously special things we're doing for you, so I'll be modifying that. Here's when we cut over features that we'll test, and then the numbering plan, what we recommend per location. You can see that this filled it in just when I put it in as locations, so this isn't necessarily right, but it's telling you nodes and that kind of thing. You don't have nodes. I don't believe. You'll be on multiple nodes, maybe one of the locations. I have to look at the parts, but we can talk about that later, so don't worry anything about that. And then everything you don't have to do. It's just going to create an extension list that we can print off, and by first and last name, and here's some welcome information we'll put in there for you. So your home will be mostly these red tabs here. So hopefully that helps you kind of get an idea of what we're looking for. And then you can always call. I saw that you called the correct number. You can call that number. When I'm doing training, I'm not going to be able to answer the phone, but if you leave me a message, I'll call you back, or you can drop me an email. I'll be trying to check those in between classes, and I'll try to respond to you if you have a specific question on how to handle any of the items. I have noticed when I sent this up, I think I unlocked yours, but I have noticed that some of these tabs or pages get locked. You can't unprotect the whole workbook, but if you get to a sheet, and I think I've seen it mostly on the sheet that's like hunt groups or something, if it says like it's restricted or locked, the passcode is going to be capital M and then lowercase ITEL and then capital SYSTEM. I'm sorry, capital S, but the YSTEM are all lowercase. So Mitel systems all together without a space, with the M and Mitel being capitalized and the S and system being capitalized will unprotect the sheet. So if you run into any of that protection problems, that's the code to do it. And just go to Unprotect Sheet under the Review tab, and you'll be able to unprotect that sheet so you can get in there. But I do recommend, knowing it fills in and it has a lot of formulas, you may want to not mess with any of the other information, just if something happens to be locked. I think I unlocked it, but I don't know if it stays unlocked if I send it to you or if it's a brand new world when you open it up. So there you go. So hopefully that helps you. Thanks, David. Have a good night.